Sportscast, October 16th, 2019. If you haven't yet, please subscribe at all our channels, YouTube, Periscope, iTunes. And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously in the reviews. And visit us on thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net. This podcast is brought to you by InstaBible. Read your Bible on your iPhone, make some pictures, and have some fun with it. Quarterback Justin Herbert, you've heard of him, said the Oregon Ducks focus all week on a more balanced attack. They saw results this past Friday night. Herbert threw for 261 yards and 2 touchdowns, while high-risk Lakio rushed for 3 more, and Oregon beat Colorado 45-3 on Friday night for its 5th straight victory. And to join us, to talk to us a little bit about Oregon and Pac-12 football, Mr. Tyler Turner himself. Welcome back to the Sportscast.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. It's been one heck of week coming up. Obviously, we'll be previewing Washington in the next couple minutes. But let's go over Colorado. You predicted it right. Colorado lets the opponent score 30 points or more. You never seen Oregon score too much except against that game against Nevada. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, I predicted it right on one end. The other end, I didn't predict it right. Where I predicted it right was Colorado's defense is not good. They had one of the worst defenses in the Power 5, if not the worst. I would have to look at the metrics behind it, but Colorado's defense is just terrible, especially against the pass. They were beat up. They weren't any good to begin with, and then they had a bunch of injuries. And that came to fruition. It was a good day by Justin Herbert. Actually, believe it or not, the receivers didn't help him a ton. There were 7 drop passes by the Oregon Duck receivers, so they can play better. But that being said, he was able to throw for 261 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Actually, Oregon really ran the ball well, too. They ran for about 260 yards, I think, somewhere around there. And the 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns? It was like 2 or 3 touchdowns by Cyrus Lakio. I think it was 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns,
and
correct.
C.J. Verdell had 170 yards rushing on 14 carries. The average, I don't know what that is, about 12 yards per carry. It just a dominating effort on the offensive side of the ball. Where I didn't predict it right was Colorado had a top 30 offense when it came to efficiency at number 26. They had a top 15 passing offense. They had the receivers that were questionable, Laviska Shenault and K.D. Nixon both played. I thought Colorado's offense was going to score. I thought it was going to be a 42-21 type game. It wasn't.
Just 3 points.
Colorado didn't score touchdowns. The only point they scored was a field goal, and they turned the ball over 4 times. And it's time to just realize that Oregon has a very good defense. There's a reason why Athlete Plus by ESPN has Oregon's defense rated number 1 out of all the defenses in the nation. They're currently number 6 in defensive efficiency, number 4, I believe it is, against the pass. They're top 10 somewhere in total defense, top 10 in scoring defense. About the only metric that they're not top 10 is rush defense. I think they're about like number 19. And there has been a little bit of room, whether it be the Auburn game, a little bit the Stanford game, a little bit maybe even the Cal game where you saw not the Cal game, wrong. A little bit the Colorado game where you saw a little bit of abilities for teams to run on the defense a little bit. But as a whole, this is a good defense, man. They're great in the secondary. They're really difficult to do anything against in the secondary. They get after the pass. They get after the quarterback on the pass rush. Their linebackers are fast, especially if it's East and West. It's hard to get anything going sideline to sideline. This is just a very good defense for Oregon right now. And you saw it on display against Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado has a lot of, had a veteran quarterback and a good offense, like you were saying, top 30. Did not show up, just 3 points. And like you were saying, I agree. Oregon defense did show up. I mean, it feels like they were prepping for the Washington game.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say show up. I mean, that sometimes discredits the ability of. Sometimes people will say that. I just think Oregon is good defense. I mean, I don't think there was guys that were open for Colorado. I mean, there was some pretty bogus there's some pretty bogus pass interference calls, I thought, against Oregon's defense too. And despite that, Colorado still couldn't score. I think there was like 4 pass interferences against the Oregon defensive backs, and despite even that, Colorado could not find the end zone. There just wasn't a lot of room to make plays against the secondary of Oregon. Montez was really running kind of for his life. He was pressured frequently, and then they weren't able to run on a consistent basis against the defense, especially sideline to sideline. It's just a good Oregon defense. I think there's enough data out there right now to see through 6 games, other than the second half against Auburn, that Oregon's defense has only given up single digits in points since the Auburn game. They've only given up 1 touchdown in 5 games since the Auburn game. This is a pretty good defense, man. It's a really good defense, actually.
Key injuries was Jacob Breland. He was injured in the late first quarter when he was tackled after catching a 22-yard pass from Herbert, and he limped to Oregon's medical tent on the sideline. He later emerged with a brace on his left leg and did not return. How much of an impact would that be for the Oregon team?
Well, he's out for the season. You believe he had ACL injury, so he doesn't play again this season. And significant impact. Jacob Breland was top 5 among tight ends nationally in catches, in yards. He led all tight ends in touchdowns. When ESPN, 247 Sports, and The Athletic, and PFF College, all of those did their mid-season All-American teams, Jacob Breland was first-team All-American. So basically, he was the best tight end nationally through the first 6 games of the season. He's gone. He's gone for the entire year. So that is a very bad injury, very significant injury. The good news, that's the bad news. Bad news is you lose the best tight end in the nation. The good news is they did get their three of their better receivers back, and it started in the Cal game. And you saw even in the Colorado game where those guys are going to be targeted a lot more. Micah Pittman, Juwan Johnson, and Brendan Schooler. And I think they're going to be able, because of those guys coming back, I think they'll be able to ride the wave of missing Jacob Breland. They had to rely on Jacob Breland a lot because of the injuries at wide receiver. But now that they have the wide receivers back, I think you're going to see him be able to utilize wide receivers more, especially now that his biggest target, his best target, Jacob Breland, is out. So maybe a little overinflated were the stats of Breland because he didn't have the receivers, but he's still a very good player, still a bad injury, and they're just going to have to utilize those guys that they brought back, and some of the receivers that have been playing, like Jalen Redd, Johnny Johnson III, Brian Addison, they're going to continue to have to play at a high level for Oregon.
There were also about 20 scouts on Friday night. Most of them were NFL and one CFL scout. Do you think they got what they needed to get?
From the prospects in general?
Yeah, the prospects in general, but also especially Herbert.
I mean, Herbert had if you look at the stat sheet, he was 18 for 32, 2 touchdowns. He completed 57% of his passes. Once again, it doesn't look great, 57% of his passes, but he had 7 drops, including 2 touchdowns. Juwan Johnson dropped a touchdown, and Hunter Compier, the backup tight end, dropped a touchdown. So if you add in the drop passes, it was a pretty good game by Herbert. He made some big-time throws. It wasn't good against a good pass defense. That has to be taken into account. So Herbert had a good game. Jacob Breland is the guy that they probably were looking at, and he's a guy that's really been rising up draft boards Dan Brugler from The Athletic did an article a couple weeks back of the 10 guys who were rising up draft boards the most since the beginning of the season as seniors that are rising up, and Jacob Vreeland was number one. Well, he tore his knee now, so that's not great. But I still think he will be a guy that probably gets drafted maybe late in the draft despite his knee injury, just because he's a good receiving tight end. And then some of the offensive linemen of Oregon that they were checking out. Obviously, Penei Sewell, he's not eligible this year. He'll be eligible in 2021. He's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's currently the highest-rated offensive lineman by the PFF in the nation, and he's just a phenomenal offensive lineman. And then you'll see guys like Shane Lemieux, offensive guard, offensive tackle Calvin Throckmorton. They have both had very good games, and they were guys that are going to be drafted this season by Oregon. And then you look at some of these defensive guys. I think a guy to watch out for is cornerback Diamador Lenore. He's currently the highest-graded cornerback by the PFF. I don't think his measurables are phenomenal for the NFL, but he's just been a very productive, very consistent cornerback for the Oregon Ducks. I think he's a guy that he's a junior. If he leaves, he'll probably be a middle-round draft pick type guy. I think he'll be a very good NFL player. And, and then you got Troy Dye, who actually went out with injury in the end of the first half. I think he'll be fine. I think it was just kind of a precautionary thing. But he's a guy that's obviously been a 3-year starter, been one of the most productive linebackers in the nation, especially in the Pac-12. He's a guy that scouts are looking after, and I think he's a future NFL guy along with Jevon Holland, who's safety for Oregon. He's not eligible either in 2021, but I think he's just a very good football player, one of the better safeties in the nation. He'll be a guy that's going to play on Sundays. So, yeah, I think from the Oregon Ducks side, I think they got some, got to see some of their prospects, and I think there's some guys that are definitely going to be playing on Sundays in the next couple drafts for Oregon.
Oregon now travels to Washington, to Seattle to be specific, to have a potential decisive North Division clash at Huskies Stadium. The rivalry between Oregon and Washington is one of the best in the West, dating back to 1900 and one of the nation's most bitter. So will this be the most decisive game of the season for Oregon?
Most decisive? What do you mean exactly?
To win the Pacific North in 12.
Do I think that this is the most important game to win the North?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the statistics, the conference standings right now, everyone in the North has 2 losses. And Oregon has victories over Cal and Stanford. And actually, Cal and Stanford, I can't think right now. They own the tiebreaker over Washington because Cal and Stanford both beat Washington. When you look at the preseason rankings, you would see that the biggest game in the North was going to be Washington versus Oregon. But when you look at actually what's happened, Washington's lost both their Pac-12 North games this year. So from a conference title perspective, I don't know if this game is even as important as the victories over Stanford and Cal. But overall, this is a big rivalry. This is the border war, the battle between Oregon and Washington. If you look at who I think the 2 best teams are in the North, it's probably Oregon and Washington. It's a top 25 matchup. Washington sneaks in at number 25. I think all of those attributed into the reality that this is a very important game. But if you look from the total conference standings, Washington's not in a great place. They're 0-2 against Pac-12 North opponents, and basically if they lose to Oregon, they can forget probably even competing at all for a Pac-12 North title this year. And so it's definitely a must victory for Washington. And even if they do win, there's a pretty good chance that they are not going to be able to make up for those losses in the North to Stanford and Cal.
What do you expect for this matchup?
I mean, what I expect is, first of all, it's a rivalry game. Second of all, it's in Washington. So that's always a tough place to play. They've only lost 2 games in Washington over the last 4 seasons. I expect Washington to come out and realize that, hey, that if they want any chance at all to compete for a Pac-12 title, they have to win this game. So I expect Washington to come out prepared, a Chris Peterson staff that is very experienced. I expect them to come out and give 100% effort, and they want to beat the rival. So that's what I expect from like a overall perspective. From a game perspective, in-game battle between offense, defense, offense, special teams. Washington, when you look at some of the models, the analytic models, Washington actually is pretty favorable when it comes to like the ESPN FBI, the ESPN SP+. Actually, Washington probably lands in the top 20. Offensive efficiency, they're a top 25 offense. Defensive efficiency, they're a top 25 defense. I think the SP+ has their defense a little bit lower than top 25, especially because of their rush defense. I think they land at about outside the top 40 when it comes to their rush defense against our 5 opponents. I think they've had trouble stopping the run. I think their front 7 is not as good as it has been other years. I think they still have a very good pass defense. Washington, I think Jimmy Lake is one of the better secondary coaches in college football. So I think you can expect a pretty good pass defense by Washington. I think they have been susceptible in the up the middle, especially their linebackers. I don't think they're quite as good as they have been past years. They had Ben Burke-Kirven, who went to the NFL. He was one of the leading tacklers in the Pac-12, and they just haven't replaced him necessarily. And they were definitely giving up a decent amount of yards against Stanford. They gave up 200-plus yards. Against USC, they gave up 200-plus yards. I believe against Cal, they gave up around 200 yards. So there's been some susceptibility to their middle of their defense giving up yards. Oregon hasn't necessarily ran the ball great this year, but the last 2 games they have been pretty good. Against Cal and against Colorado, Oregon ran for 200-plus yards on the ground. Their offensive line really seems to be coming together. Obviously, the narrative preseason was that Oregon had possibly the best offensive line in the country. And the last 2 games, I would pretty much agree with that. Panay Sewell is the highest-graded offensive lineman in the nation. Shane Lemieux is, I think, the 2nd highest-graded offensive guard in the nation. So the left side of their line is pretty dominant. Calvin Throckmorton has played pretty good the last couple of games. Dallas Warmack, the guard, I know he was all-conference, all-PFF last game. So their offensive line is playing pretty good. They're playing well enough that they're able to get some yards on the ground. Will it carry on the road? They weren't great in their 2 road games so far against Auburn and against Stanford, Oregon, that is. So will it carry on the road? Who knows? Sometimes it's different. Just because you play well at home, especially running the ball, doesn't mean you necessarily run the ball well on the road. But if they can run the ball effectively like they have the last 2 games on the road against a defense that has been susceptible, like 5 teams to run it, I think they'll open up the pass, because what will have to happen is Washington will have to bring an extra man, and therefore you could utilize guys in the slot or a tight end. Now the issue is that's where Jacob Breland would come in, because if the other team is using another guy to stop the run, what it'll do is utilize a guy from the tight end position or a slot over the middle. Well, they don't have Breland. So they're going to either have to use maybe one of the wide receivers, a guy like Jawan Johnson, who's a bigger target, maybe utilize him in the slot, or maybe one of the younger tight ends, like a Spencer Webb, who made a couple plays, like the big touchdown he had against Auburn, maybe utilize him as a tight end receiving threat in the slot if Washington does cheat a guy up to stop the run. I think what will really be necessary for Oregon's offense to be successful in this game is they need to utilize that run game because they have a good line. Washington is not a great rush defense, and then that will open up the pass game, the one-on-one matchups on the outside that hopefully Oregon can win against what will be a pretty good pass defense, especially at home. Washington's pass defense will be pretty good at home. And if they're able to get pressure on Herbert, Washington's pass rush, then that could be problematic also. So I think what really has to happen is Oregon needs to run the ball well. If they are able to run the ball well, I think they'll set up some pass plays, and that will be a successful game for the most part for the Oregon offense. Now, on the other side of the ball, I'm sorry, I keep on clearing my throat. I'm a little bit battling a little sickness right now.
It's okay. We all, in this season, we are.
Yeah, it's a little annoying. But on the other side of the ball, Washington's offense has been great against non-Power 5 schools, against Hawaii, against BYU, against Eastern Washington. Washington's offense put up very good numbers, especially passing the ball. Easton was very proficient, threw 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. They're able to make big plays in the run game. Salvin Ahmad was able to get big chunk yardage. Now against the Power 5 teams and in Pac-12 play, Jacob Eason has not been near as good. The wide receiver core has had consistency as far as getting open and making catches. They had a lot of drops against Cal. They had a significant amount of drops against Stanford. They didn't do a lot against USC as far as the pass game. Jacob Easton, I think, has been around 60% completion percentage and 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in Pac-12 play. His completion percentage is around 75% with 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions against non-Power 5 teams. Significant difference. So that's an inconsistent offense. So what you say is when they're more talented than their opposition, they're really good. When they're not more talented, they've not been very good. Well, they're not more talented than Oregon. I would say that Oregon's defense matching up against their offense, Oregon's defense has more talent. There's more high-level players, guys that are probably going to be playing on Sundays on Oregon's defense than Washington's offense. I don't think they have a consistent run game. Their most consistent north-south runner, which I think if you're going to get yards on the Oregon defense, you need to run north and south. And their most consistent north-south runner is a freshman called Newton. He's not. I don't think he's going to be playing this game. He got hurt in the Stanford game, and he hasn't played since. And so I don't think he's going to be available. Salvin Ahmad and the other 2 running backs are more all-purpose kind of home run guys, especially Salvin Ahmad, but every down guys that get that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards of carry, he's not as good, Salvin Ahmad isn't. And that's what you need against Oregon. And so they're going to miss that Newton guy, Washington is. And then the wide receiver core has just not been really consistent in getting separation and making big plays against the Power 5 competition. Well, the best team that they're going to play so far is going to be Oregon. Oregon has one of the best pass defenses, not just in the pass, in the nation. And I don't think Washington has guys that are necessarily going to make a ton of plays. And then Jacob Eason, when he gets rushed, has not been as good. He's been a little skittish. He's gotten rid of the ball. He's made his accuracy down a little bit. That's what you see around the 60% completion percentage against the Power 5 teams. And Oregon leads the Pac-12 in sacks and quarterback hurries. And if they're able to get pressure against against Washington and make Jacob Eason uncomfortable, skittish in the pocket, then he's going to have to make plays down the field with his receivers, who I don't think have gotten a lot of separation against better competition, and I think they're going to struggle to get separation against a better Oregon defense. The statistics just show against Power 5, their pass offense is outside the top 30. As Oregon's passing offense, whether it's against a good passing offense like Colorado or whoever they have played, even like against a Stanford team who has been a better offense than even maybe the numbers indicate. I think it showed that Oregon's defense is consistently a very good pass defense. And if you are going to get any yards, it is going to have to be in the north-south run game. And Washington hasn't proven, especially with anyone other than the Newton kid, who's probably going to be out injured, to really get consistent gains on the ground. I just don't see a lot of success for Washington's offense. Now, it is at home. It is a rivalry game. Are guys going to come out and make big-time plays? Are they going to get the crowd behind them? And can you throw stats out the window? And are you going to get big plays down the field with a guy maybe like freshman Puka Nacua or senior Aaron Fuller or Chico McClatcher? Or, are they going to make plays that they have not necessarily made against Power 5 competition? It's possible. And Jacob Eason is a potential first-round quarterback. He is a guy that can make big plays with his arm. He does have a next-level arm that Oregon hasn't seen yet. And it is at home. And it is a rivalry game. But statistics and data right now don't show that they're going to make those plays. So it has to be something, they'd have to play a little bit beyond what they have so far and what analytics sees on paper right now on offense for them to be successful.
Oregon beat Washington last year, 30-27. Washington is 5-2. Stanford beat them, and California as well. They're ranked number 25, and like Tyler was saying, it seems like it's this Oregon's game to win. Obviously, the only caveat is they're playing in Seattle.
Yep, playing in Seattle, and it's a rivalry game. And, the weather is predicted to not be very good. So there is some factors, and factor in that Justin Herbert has not played as well on the road. He's been more inconsistent, less accurate, and he's also not played as well against top 25 competition. So add in these factors, I would not count Washington out.
It's going to be a tight one.
I would say that model, and I've looked at a couple models. I've looked at some data-driven analytics when it comes to this game, and the models consistently seem to favor Oregon. That's why they're favored. That's why they're the safe bet. But in rivalry games, you just never know. And if Herbert comes out and makes a couple mistakes, throws a couple picks, and it is a pretty good pass defense. Jimmy Lake is one of the best secondary coaches in college football. If he's able to his secondary is able to make force Herbert into some bad decisions and make some mistakes.
Tyler Turner, are you still there?
Okay. I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you went off for a bit.
Okay. Am I going on and off?
No. That was the first time. Okay. It was like 2 seconds, but.
Okay, it's because I'm driving. I'm driving 4-hour drive, so if you lose me at all, let me know because,
he's in the upper Midwest.
Could get a little bit reception could get a little bit sketchy. But what I was saying is, if Herbert turns the ball over, or Oregon fumbles the ball like they did against Cal a couple weeks ago, that's going to be problematic. They can't turn the ball over at Washington. Washington is a better team than Cal. I really, truly believe that, even though Cal beat them. And I think, especially because it's at Washington, that if Oregon makes mistakes, they'll lose. So they have to play a clean game. can't fumble the ball. Herbert can't turn the ball over. But if they play like they can, up to their potential, I think the data shows that Oregon is the better team than Washington this season.
There you have it. CBS Sportsline has Oregon winning by 2. So pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
It'd probably be very similar in Vegas, but we'll see how the numbers will turn. It's only Wednesday, so a few more days till Saturday. It's on ABC, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a huge national televised game. Looking forward to it. Let's jump into the AP Top 25. LSU beat Florida 42-28, making them the number 2 in the nation. Tyler, do you agree with this?
Yeah, I actually have to put out, I do our top 10 every week, and I think I'm going to put it out here. And I probably would have LSU. I'd probably have them number 3. But, yeah, I'll disagree. I'd probably have the number 3.
Who's your number 2 in your book?
Alabama.
And number 1?
Ohio State.
Yeah, you've been mentioning about Ohio State for the past couple of weeks, and of course the talent level is good. Obviously, they have playing the Pac-10. I mean, sorry, not the Pac-10, the Big Ten, and that makes it rough. Which makes the Alabama LSU game a 1-2 matchup, which is a few weeks from now.
Hey, hold on.
Yeah,
hold on a second. Why does playing in the Big Ten make it rough?
Well, it's a little bit more competitive than the SEC, I think. Obviously it's hard to stay undefeated in the Big Ten. Haven't we spoke about that a few weeks ago?
You think that the Big Ten is more competitive than the SEC?
I think so. I think it's a little bit more leveled.
I don't know if I agree.
Well,
I mean, I think that data disagrees with you too. I mean, I think it's harder. So you think it's harder to go undefeated in the Big Ten than in the SEC? So you think it's harder for Ohio State to finish undefeated in the Big Ten than, let's say, Alabama or LSU in the SEC?
After this season, I will have to retract that. After seeing this season.
So you think that it's harder where to finish undefeated?
Between the Big Ten and SEC, they're both pretty even, now thinking about it. Almost the same.
Yeah, so I'm asking you a question. Do you think it's more likely, it's a more difficult road for Ohio State to finish undefeated or for Alabama or LSU to finish undefeated?
I think looking at the schedule, I think it'd be more Ohio State than Alabama. Because Alabama has LSU coming home. Has them going to Alabama. So it'll be slightly.
I think maybe what you would. Okay, so right now, currently in the top 10, you got 3 Big Ten schools. You got Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Penn State. In the SEC, you have Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, and right outside the top 10, you got Auburn.
Yeah.
I would say in the top end, I would still favor the SEC. Yeah, I would. Because I think the Big Ten right now, I think has 5 in the top 25. I think the SEC has 6 teams in the top 25. I think top to bottom, it's pretty even. Maybe even favor the Big Ten a little bit, but I think at the top, I think the SEC is a little better. I think it's just a little harder to finish undefeated because Alabama would have to beat LSU, they have to beat Auburn, they have to beat a Georgia or Florida probably in the SEC title game. Ohio State has to beat Wisconsin at Ohio State. They have to beat Penn State at Ohio State. They have to beat Michigan at Michigan. Then they have to beat – it's pretty close. You know what? It's pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, now thinking about it, this season's been different.
It's pretty close. I just say it's pretty even. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I think you just have to go with the eyeball test right now and who looks the best. an argument can be made that LSU should be number one because LSU beat a top 15, top 20 Texas team on the road, and they beat a top 10 Florida team. Alabama has currently not beat one team in the top 25. Ohio State has currently not beat one team in the top 25.
They're in the same boat.
You could argue that LSU should be number one right now, who they've beaten. And actually, if today, as of October, what's the date today?
16th.
October 16th?
Correct.
Yeah, as of October 16th, if there was a college football playoff, they're going to release it November 5th. But if they released it today, I think that LSU would actually be number one.
I can see your argument. Where do you see Clemson at, realistically?
As of today, I think they're 4.
Okay. They make the cut.
I think I'm just making a guess. This is me just guessing right now. I think it'd be first LSU, second Alabama, third Ohio State. I actually think it would be fourth Oklahoma because they did beat a top 25 Texas team. And I think it would be fifth Clemson.
Yeah.
That's what I would guess right now. Could I be wrong? Sure.
No, sounds about right.
That would be my guess. And that's how actually I maybe will go with my Sportscast top 10. I think Clemson falls fifth. Their best victory is at home against A&M, who is 3-3, who lost 2 games at home to Alabama by 19 and Auburn by 8. I don't think Texas A&M is very good. I don't think they're very good. So that's Clemson's best victory. They had a near-miss victory over North Carolina by 1 on the road. And the rest of the victories are against crappy teams. So, yeah, I'd probably go Clemson fifth. I still don't know Oklahoma. They beat Texas, but Texas also has a ton of injuries, especially on defense. But they won. At the end of the day, they won, and they beat Texas, and so that's a good victory. LSU has a really good offense. Let's be honest. They scored 42 against a pretty good Florida defense. They scored, 42, 45 against Texas on the road. They have a really good offense. Their defense, I still think, might be a slight question mark. They gave up 38 against Texas, and they gave up 28 against Florida. And they also had to hold them a couple times in the red zone. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now, I think Alabama, if I were to say who I think the 2 best teams are, I think it's Alabama and Ohio State. But that's just the eyeball test. That's just looking at analytics. That's just looking at the efficiency of the offense and the efficiency of the defense. The SP Plus, I predicate a lot of my hypothesis upon that, and Colorado and Alabama and Ohio State are both extremely high because of their offense and defensive efficiency. So I'd probably say those 2 at the top, but LSU probably has had the 2 best victories.
November 9th. Remember that date, November 9th, LSU, Alabama. We'll have our big show before then, so we're going to talk a lot about that game. But that game is looming high because I can see an LSU team beating Alabama in Alabama.
I could, yeah. I could, possibly.
By 3 points, though. Okay.
Yeah.
Packers beat the Lions Thursday night by 1 point, 23-22 by a field goal. Your Packers are 4-2.
No, they're 5-1.
Yes, correct. 5-1.
Yep. Yeah, they somehow pulled it out. They got a little help from the referees. I don't necessarily agree with a couple of those calls late in the game, but it helps my Packers out. I still don't know if I completely buy this Packer team. They have a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. Devontae Adams, their best wide receiver, has been out a couple games with a turf toe injury. Geronimo Allison left the game with a head injury. Lazard, I forgot his first name, Alan Lazard made some big plays in the fourth quarter. He was a third-string wide receiver. Rodgers vouched for him. He made some big plays in the passing game. And the Packers defense was stingy in the red zone. You know, they forced Lions to 5 field goals, and that really was the difference. And it enabled them to get a last-second field goal to win the game. Basically, a walk-off field goal to win the game. I still think the Packers, you know, they need to get more healthy at the wide receiver position. I think even when healthy, the wide receiver position is still questionable right now. The passing game is kind of a middle-of-the-road passing game as far as statistically in the NFL. The run game's been better than expected, but still, I'd say the offense as a whole is still a middle-of-the-road offense. A lot of the success has been predicated on turnovers and stingy red zone defense. You know, the defense has given up actually some big plays the last couple of games, but Green Bay has done a good job in the plus-minus as far as turnovers. Just a little worrisome that their offense is still kind of a little bit meddling. Their defense sometimes gives up big plays, specifically in the run game. But they're 5-1. At the end of the day, it's what's your record? And in the NFL, it's finding ways to win games, and they've found ways to win games so far this year. So, yeah.
Their next game is against the Raiders this Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Due to time, we got to head into game predictions.
Sounds good to me.
Let's start with Purdue at Iowa.
Iowa.
Wisconsin at Illinois.
Where do you get these game predictions? You just randomly pick games?
I get them from articles, and I get them from like the schedules.
Okay.
And I pick some sucky ones, but I mean, like, the good ones are coming up. So.
Okay.
Wisconsin. Clemson at Louisville.
Clemson.
Arizona State at Utah. Number 17, Arizona State, and number 13, Utah.
Yeah, this is one of the best games this year. This year. It's a good game this year, but it's one of the best games this week. It's one of the 3 top 25 matchups. 2 in the Pac-12, by the way. This is a good week for Pac-12 ball. Arizona State has 5-1. You know, they're in the top 25. They had a sneaky good season. They found a way to win a lot of close games, including a 3-point victory over Washington State. That being said, I think Utah is a better team. I don't think Arizona State runs the ball that well, and I think that Utah is one of the better rush defenses in the college football. They have a top 7 overall defense. I think Jaden Daniels can make some plays through the air, but I think they're going to be a little bit one-dimensional. And I think Arizona State's defense has been very inconsistent, especially against the pass. I think Tyler Huntley, because he's a senior, a 3-year starter, he's been one of the more efficient quarterbacks in college football. I think he's the most efficient quarterback in the Pac-12 right now. I think he's able to make some plays through the air. It's also at home, at Utah. I think it's going to be like a 28-14 victory for the Utes.
Let's go Utah. Michigan at Penn State.
This is probably the biggest game nationally. College game days at Penn State. I've looked at a couple models for this game, and the fact is, especially against better competition, both these offenses have not been very good. Penn State, as good as they've been defensively, when they've played against better teams like Pittsburgh, Iowa on Saturday, their offense is not very good. Now, they are at home, and that's huge. And they're a big advantage at Happy Valley, whiteout, college game days there, night game. And Michigan's offense is just darn inconsistent. And their defense, even at times, like against against Wisconsin, and even a little bit against Illinois on Saturday, has been a little bit inconsistent. I think Penn State's offense is going to be able to do enough, especially because it's at home. And I think Penn State is one of the better defenses in college football. I don't think on the road for Michigan to really find a big game to have a big statistical game against a really good defense on the road, it's not really going to happen, I don't think. I think Penn State wins. I think it's kind of going to be an ugly game. I think there's going to be some turnovers, but I think their home crowd and just a really good defense is able to secure the victory. 21-13, Penn State.
21-13. Give us a score for Oregon at Washington.
I'm kind of battling this score in my head. I'm like, what's going to happen? Bad weather, on the road, against a rival. Is this Oregon offense that, when they've played against better defenses, hasn't been super consistent, like against Cal, Auburn, Stanford? 21-17, 21 points effectively. I think it's going to be a little bit the same. I think they're going to struggle to be consistently able to take plays downfield, especially because of the injury to Jacob Breland. But I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think Jacob Eason has showed the susceptibility against good defenses. He's just not been great. And I think Oregon is just a little more talented. Look at that top 100 ratio of players. Oregon has 11. Washington has 5. Only 2 of the 5 top 100 players are regular contributors for Washington, while 9 of the 11 top 100 players are regular contributors for Oregon, including 5 being starters. I think the little more talent on Oregon, especially top-end talent being regular contributors, I think they're able to make a couple big plays. I think they're able to force a couple turnovers, possibly in the red zone. I think Oregon wins 21-13.
21-13. That's a good margin. Random question. What is your favorite type of food? Here are the options. Vegetables, fruits, grains, or meat.
Okay, vegetables, grains, and meat. What would I choose between the 3?
Also fruits as well. Yeah, from the 4. Vegetables, fruits, grains, and meat.
Favorite or what I eat the most?
Your favorite.
I mean, I really like fruit, but the thing is I eat a lot of meat. I'm a big protein guy, so I eat a lot of turkey, I eat a lot of chicken, some beef here and there, eggs. Well, that's not meat. What am I talking about? Okay, I probably eat the most meat, so I'm gonna go meat. But I like fruit. I do not like vegetables.
Who
I
does?
Like to drink vegetables. Well, I like to drink vegetables. I do juices a lot. I do like a juice a day, like a mixture of like green powders and flora and spirulina and greens in it. But I don't love to eat them, except for beets. I love beets. Actually, beets might be my favorite anything. I like beets. Hold on, maybe it's a vegetable then. I like beets. I could eat beets all day.
Can you eat a veggie burger?
Yeah, oh sure.
Okay, well, meat is winning.
I'm a really healthy eater because of what I do.
I know.
I eat really healthy, but it doesn't mean I love it.
Meat is winning by far, 100%. No one has voted for the other guys. So.
Sure, you know what? Throw a loop in there. I'm gonna go vegetable because I like beets and juices.
There you go, vegetable. Go on the Twitter and vote on the Sportscast account. Tyler, how can people reach you to talk about Mr. Jacob Breland?
Well, don't be talking to me about Jacob Breland. Don't be talking. I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about one of our best players going out the season with an injury. It's depressing.
I know, it sucks.
That's like the one depressing thing going on with Oregon right now. Everything else, their defense is playing great. Their offense looks better. The receivers came back. The one negative is we lost the best tight end in the nation this season with an injury. And he was rising up draft boards, and it might affect his draft stock. So don't talk to him. Talking about anything else, guys. At TurnerCast.
At TurnerCast. And you can reach us at thesportscast.net or on Twitter at thesportscast1. We'll be live tweeting the Oregon and Husky game this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune over that. Alabama plays Tennessee. We'll be live tweeting that as well. And I guess we'll find.
Hey, by the way, what time is the Alabama-Tennessee game?
Let me let you know. Alabama and Tennessee is at nighttime, 9 p.m. at night.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it won't be at the same time.
No same time, but obviously that game we know the result anyways. But Tyler, I appreciate you coming on.
But that's cool. I've been the whole time worried because we've had a good consistency of like Oregon and Alabama do not play at the same time.
They don't. Yeah, that's a miracle.
I just waited for the day that they clash with each other.
That day will happen. Then we'll probably have to start a Sportscast 2 on Twitter if that comes to be.
Or more than I think in that case, it's just what game is better.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean,
let's say Oregon plays the same time that Alabama LSU plays. I don't need to, Alabama LSU gets precedent.
And Alabama has only had 2 hard games this year, so.
Yeah, but if Alabama Tennessee was on the same time as Oregon versus Washington, Oregon versus Washington's a better game.
Oh yeah, by far. So, I mean, Washington's ranked.
It didn't. Yeah, it's 2 ranked teams. Tennessee's a dumpster fire. So, it just depends on which game's better. So.
Ty Turner, always a pleasure.
Hi, man.